In this video, we will talk about mixing gray and other neutral colors from primary and secondary colors. I'm hoping to demonstrate that by doing this, we will be able to create a lot more visual interest, a lot more depth in our drawings than we would get if we used colors straight out of the tube. If you watch till the end, you will see also an example of grays straight out of the tube, and you'll be able to compare the two approaches. First, let's test some colors. I'm going to paint swatches. The first color that comes to mind is, of course, red. The cardinal is red. So can I mix gray based on that color? Yes, I can if I mix it with its complementary color, which will be green. I do get a beautiful gray. Of course, the exact shade of gray will vary depending on the exact red and green pigment that I would use. You see the pigment names on the screen. So this will be my first option. I'll always try to paint a little swatch of each color on top, because later it will be, if I don't, later it will be impossible for me to remember which colors exactly I mixed. Let's try some other colors. What else can we try? What if I went with orange? This is permanent orange by Danielle Smith. So if I wanted to neutralize it, I would need its complement. This is Antwerp blue, and it has way too much green in it. The orange is too yellow and the blue is too green. So I'm getting green, so this didn't work. Let's see, what else can we do? So permanent orange. Let me try ultramarine purple. The complement of orange is blue. But like I said, exact pigment, exact shade makes a huge difference. I do get pretty nice warm gray with this combination. This could be used somewhere. This kind of looks like the tail of the bird. Maybe I'll use this. This could be a good option. Also looks like the branches that I see in the reference photo. I feel I can do better with this permanent orange. Let's try another combo. This is Moonglow, a very cool purple. I'm getting a lot deeper gray, but it still has a lot of brown in it. It still has a lot of warmth. Beautiful color though, so I'll keep that in mind. Permanent orange and Moonglow. I want to try something with yellow. I see a little bit of sunshine in the reference photos, so I might start with the yellow underwash. Let's try a couple of options with yellow. If I use mineral violet, this is very brown. Even if I add a little more mineral violet, this is kind of tree bark color, which has its uses, but I don't think this will work for my painting. I need something cooler. Maybe I'll try indigo with my other yellow swatch, and I do get very deep, almost black color. Pretty cool with green undertones. I forgot about lemon yellow. I'll paint it on this side here, a little swatch with that as well, maybe a couple. Of course, the deeper the initial color, like I started with that red, it's pretty deep color. So the resulting gray will be darker, almost black. Or if I start with lemon yellow and mix it with my ultramarine purple, I'm getting beautiful gray, but it's pretty light gray. Let's try indigo again with lemon yellow, see if I can get rid of some of that green and still get a nice color. I don't think lemon yellow makes a lot of difference in indigo, just too weak to be noticeable. All right, I'm going to let these swatches dry and then I can analyze them one more time, but I think I already made my decision. I'm going to do a tiny little sketch of my color palette just to make sure that all my colors will work. This is a good way not to waste your watercolor paper. To make every painting successful is to use little scraps to test the whole color palette for each painting, instead of starting on a large sheet and then ending up with some unwanted surprises. All right, so I think to have a unified color palette, the colors I will use will be Winsor red and phthalo green. Makes sense because I can use Winsor red for the bird, and when I mix gray from red and green, it will hopefully look very natural and harmonious with the bird. So it will not be some strange gray color that I will introduce in the picture. The overall picture will look very balanced and harmonious. And I might also introduce just a tiny bit of indigo for the darkest areas, because I need something to show the bird's face, the black on the branches. Judging by this little sketch that I'm painting, a little bit of indigo will work just fine with my color combo. I sketched the bird and the branches with a pencil. It's not a super complicated drawing, so I didn't feel I need to transfer the photo on paper. I'm going to take off the excess graphite with my dry cleaning pad, and I am going to start painting wet on wet. I want all these distant branches to be very soft and kind of undefined, and I also want the bird to be somewhat fluffy, so starting wet on wet would be the way to go. I'm going to mix my gray on the palette, so it's Windsor Red and Tallow Green. I have to be a little bit careful about the proportion, so it's not too green and not too red. I want these colors to perfectly neutralize each other to get that beautiful deep gray that I had in my little swatch. I have my watercolor paper at a slight angle. I'm sorry you're getting a little bit of distortion, but if I keep it flat, first of all, the colors are not going to float and mix, and second of all, I'm getting too much glare from the overhead lights that I use for filming. I am starting with the background and I'm painting around the bird. I like working large, but this painting is not very big. It's a quarter of a watercolor sheet. And for me, it's really pleasant to work on the smaller format from time to time because I can complete a painting in a fairly short amount of time and feel like I did something creative that day. So I usually pick which painting I'm going to work on and what format I'm going to use, depending on how much time I can assign to my painting that day. I can add a little more red and hint at those distant branches, and I can drop in more gray in the areas between them where I want to darken the background. And there is like a distant light in the reference photo, so I want to keep that. There is no need to cover the whole sheet with paint. It's a good idea to let your painting breathe and leave a little bit of white paper. The left side of the cardinal will be in shadow, so I'm going to drag that gray into the bird, and now I can add even more red to my mixture and paint the tail. Actually, let's paint the body first, and then I'll drop in some gray in the shadow areas. So just basically covering the whole bird with intense red. I have cardinals in my backyard and they sometimes wake me up in the morning with a chirping, so I wanted to paint one for a long time. They're really beautiful birds and they come in pairs to the bird feeder in my backyard. I see them eating there, and the males are very vocal. They sing very loud, but only in the mornings. That's when they're most active. The front of the bird, the chest and the belly, are a little bit warmer than my Windsor Red, so I'm going to drop some yellow in there to warm it up, and the rest can be Windsor Red. And then I am going to neutralize red somewhat with my phthalo green and paint the shadow areas. The tail is a lot more neutral, and also the light comes through the feathers, so some areas will be a little bit lighter. So I need to lift some paint also in some areas so it's not too intense. Define that branch. Of course, it kind of floated everywhere, but it's fine. We can find it a little bit later. The main thing is to connect our subject in some way to at least three sides of the painting. I think that shadow in the center is a lot more green than the other ones, so we can adjust the proportion, the exact tone of gray by adding different amounts of each pigment to the mixture. Alright, this will be my first layer. I'm going to lay it flat and let it dry. For the second layer, let's give a little bit more definition to the background. The branches that I see in the distance are slightly lighter than the spaces behind them, so I need to paint them negatively. So I need to add some pigment in between those branches. Still using a flat brush, but it's a lot smaller than the first one I used. This is 1/2 inch, and I'm still mixing my gray on the palette because I want to control the proportion of each pigment and have neutral color. I don't want it to be too red or too green. And I am finding at least some of those branches that I see in the background. The most important thing here, I always talk about it in my videos where I paint some vegetation, is not to keep things at exact same angles or parallel to each other, because that just never happens in nature by itself. And we as humans always try to have things parallel and kind of neatly organized. So when I paint, I always make sure that the branches and stalks and leaves are all kind of nicely arranged and are not running parallel to each other. It just looks unnatural. I'm going a lot darker with this layer because I want to have good contrast in my painting, and everything probably looks way too dark for you and for me too, but I know that I will be using opaque white to bring back the highlights, so I'm hoping after I add the highlights, I will bring back that tonal range and the painting will kind of balance itself out. So darkening everything around the cardinal and still keeping some of those areas a lot lighter. He's my focal point, so I want him to have the maximum contrast and to really stand out. Winsor red and phthalo green in particular, are very staining pigments. So mixing them together, I am able to achieve a very dark color. If I mixed pure pigments without any water, I will basically get black. Like I said, the exact shade of the neutral color that you get and also its intensity will greatly depend. It's not just red and green, it will depend on which pigments exactly you mixed. And you will get different results with every pigment, with every pair. Alright, let's switch to my indigo. I'm also going to modify it slightly with some Winsor red, so I can kind of bring it into the family of colors that I'm working with. And I'm going to paint the texture on the branch and some other smaller details. I'm trying not to overpower my painting with too much of that really dark, almost black color. But I do need some dark accents so I can have good contrast and good tonal range in the painting. Like I said, I'm making the painting a lot darker than the reference photo, but that's what we artists do. That's my artistic license, my interpretation. I want this to be a lot more kind of moody and mysterious than this cheerful reference photo. I'm creating a slightly different mood in my painting. So except for this tiny bit of yellow that I used on the chest of the cardinal, I'm basically working with 3 colors for the whole painting. That's the limited palette, is the recipe for harmonious and unified results. Paint the face of the cardinal. This is basically pure indigo. When it's intense like that, it looks black, but it's a cool black because it has so much ultramarine blue in it. And we can add a few details to make the bird look more fluffy, like he has some feathers. I'm using a small dagger brush to add all those small details. If you want to know more about how to use watercolor materials, colors, brushes, and also if you want an in-depth look at watercolor painting, I have a 7-hour course on painting watercolor. It's called From Zero to Watercolor Hero, and I offer special discount to all my YouTube viewers. You can find the link in the description under this video, and I also offer a free guide to watercolor brushstrokes. You can download it from my website as well, kseniaanis.com, so make sure and check out those links after you finish watching this video, and hopefully you'll find some useful information there for your watercolor practice. Final touches with watercolor. Working with pure indigo with a small brush. The paint, as it dries, it lightens, and I really want to intensify some areas to have good contrast. in my painting. So working, adding all those little details on both branches, maybe just a few in the background there. I don't want to do too much, but I do want to balance that black that I painted on the face of the bird. Alright, watercolor portion of the painting is done. Let's just add a few highlights with white ink. This is Peach Martin's Pen White. The same dagger brush works great. Just a few touches of white. I see a very distinct highlight on both sides of the bird. There's a little bit of light in his eyes. I can also drag some of the ink in transparent form into my painting to lighten certain areas where I maybe over darkened the shadow a little bit. And since it's bare branches, it's obviously winter, I'm going to sprinkle some white ink to hint at the snow. It gives some texture and some movement to my painting. I like to do that sometimes. Alright, my cardinal is ready. You will see the finished version in just a second, but there is something else I wanted to show you in this video. I don't want you to just take my word for harmony and unity of mixed grays. I want to give you an example. So I'm going to paint another very quick sketch of the same cardinal, but I will use colors out of the tube that came with my Holbein set of watercolors. They're not on my palette. I'm going to put them into the separate ceramic dishes. I'm using ivory black and sepia. In theory, these colors are very close to what I see in the reference photo. I'll speed up this portion. I'm not going to show you the whole painting process, but I basically used Winsor Red again for the cardinal, and I painted the background and shadows on the bird with those two neutrals out of the tube. I honestly tried to do a good job on this painting, but just my heart wasn't in it, so it didn't turn out that pretty. But I think the main reason it didn't turn out is not because I don't like these colors or I didn't apply them correctly. I think the main reason the other one looks better is because the grays that I mixed are related to the main subject, to the focal point of the painting, to that red bird, and they're derived from that pigment. When I used neutrals out of the tube, even though I tried to mix them with red, first of all, they look too warm, so they don't push into the background quite as much. They also look like they don't quite belong in this painting. But that's my personal opinion. I know some people use these pigments very successfully in their paintings. I'm showing you the two sketches side by side, so you can decide for yourself, and please let me know in comments which one you prefer. I hope at least this video gave you some food for thought. Thank you so much for watching it, and I hope to see you in the next one here on Tamirab Studios channel. Help other artists to see this video by liking or sharing it. To see future videos, subscribe and click the bell button to be notified when they're published. Thanks again and stay creative!